Hey guys, welcome back to Repurposed. I appreciate you watching. The video you're about to watch is myself sharing my testimony in class. I recorded so that I could purposefully share it with you guys to be more transparent about my story. There was a specific amount of time that I had to share, and so of course I wasn't able to mention everything that's happened in my life or everyone that's been a part of that. That doesn't take away from anything that I've done or any people that I've met. I do appreciate and love every one of you, but I shared what I felt was necessary in that moment. There's been a lot of things going on here, a lot of changes that I've been making. I was blessed to be able to share my testimony on my 5-month sober date, which is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to more sober days in the future. Some of you have mentioned that you'd like to partner with me at this time, which is incredible. Of course, I am on a school visa, which means that I am not allowed to legally work, making it a little bit harder to pay for school while I'm here. If you would like to partner with me in that time, I'm using the platform Give, Send, Go. The link will be in the description. Any amount is that incredible, and even just your thoughts and prayers, also fantastic. What does partnering with me look like? Every month I'd be sending out an email or possibly a video like this, giving a little bit of an overview as to the progress that I've made within that month, different things that I've learned, different battles that I may have conquered or won, and of course with that, you'll find out where exactly your money went. There are different things that will be needed, like a winter coat. I know I'm in California, but apparently Northern California still gets a little chilly. So stuff like a coat, different toiletries and stuff, and then being able to actually pay off the tuition itself. It's very important. That being said, I appreciate you guys for watching nonetheless, and I hope you enjoy the video. I went through some crazy depression, drinking until I just passed out on the couch and I spilled alcohol on myself or something. It was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'm sitting on my couch. I've already finished a bottle, I'm on a second bottle. Screaming at God, like, can you get me out of this? Like, save me. I am in such depression. I keep thinking about just like jumping off my balcony. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, I just really need someone to talk to. I really, really, really need someone to talk to, please. Like 2 minutes later, someone texted me. All right. Hola. Okay. So first, I'm actually going to start with, I want to share a couple scriptures with you that have really impacted my life. God has been in and through my life, through the entire thing, and it's been an interesting time. Anyways, okay. The first one is probably my favorite scripture, and it sounds really random, but it's Genesis 22:5. And it says, stay here with the donkey. Abraham told the servants, the boy and I will travel a little further and we will worship there and then we will come right back. Obviously, that's the story of Abraham and going to sacrifice his son. But it's my favorite part because this is before he even goes up the mountain, before God even tells him that he's got a ram. And he says, we will be right back, which has always impacted me to be like, he didn't even encounter God at that moment yet. He just knew that God was so faithful. And so I try to always kind of remember that and walk in, like, even if I don't understand it, just pretend as if it's already done. And yeah, so that Psalm 40, 1-3, which is, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me, he heard me cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and mire, and set my feet upon a rock and steadied me as I walked along. Many will see what he's done and be amazed. He has given me a new song to sing, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see what he has done and be amazed. They will put their trust in the Lord. And then the story of Acts 3, which I won't really go into, but it's a really cool story. You should check that out. Anyways, so a little, I guess, pre-story. My grandparents on the father's side were Christian. Great parents, great grandparents to me. I know that my dad and siblings have said that my grandfather had a little bit of a temper, but I don't really know a whole lot about that side. I'm not really sure if there was any alcohol abuse or anything like that. Mother's side was very different. Mother's side was not a Christian side. My grandfather was an abusive alcoholic. My grandmother kind of just took it and kept quiet so she didn't get hit more. The kids didn't get hit more. My mother and her siblings always fought. They were not best friends whatsoever. And my mother had a high school sweetheart named Spiro. He, when my mother was about 17 or 18, I want to say it doesn't matter, 17 or 18, took advantage of my mother. And she became pregnant with my sister. Now, he was from a lot of money. We were not. So they said that was absolutely unacceptable. And also, they were Greek. We were not. It was unacceptable, Spiro. And if you don't leave this woman immediately, we won't give you your inheritance. That was a lot of money. So they kind of hummed and hawed. Eventually, they actually went and got secretly married together. And then, before my sister was born, he took off. So my sister has never met her father. That obviously really messed with my mother a lot. It's, between her dad being a abusive person and now this, her trust issues with men are really starting to kick up. And then she met my dad, who was from a Christian house, as far as I know, when they first met. It was a good relationship. They met in the church and all that. And then I was born. I was born on April 19th, 1993. I did not have a usual birth. I was born with something called meconium aspiration hypertension. The easiest way to say that is I swallowed a bunch of crap before I came out, and that just completely filled my lungs. So I came out and I was not breathing. I have a big scar down my neck here from the surgery, and there's a bald spot in my head here from that. Basically, because I was not breathing, they had to have surgery on me right away. They had to, first of all, I needed something to live called an ECMO machine. There was one, at the time, there was one of three in all of Canada in 1993, and one of them just happened to be at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. That was about half an hour away from me. So they actually needed to airlift me to another hospital, the Sick Kids, sorry. But to do that, they had to paralyze me. They couldn't put me under, and they needed to make sure that even the slightest nerve twitch wasn't going to happen, because every time your body moves, it's using more oxygen, and I didn't have that oxygen. So they had to paralyze me. That's what this scar is from up here. Basically, I had a bunch of needles that the nurse put in my body, and when the nurse took this needle out, some of the paralyzing liquid spilled on my skull and burned it, so hair can't grow there. I always told my mom she had a really awesome opportunity to become a millionaire, but she was, for some reason, just grateful having a son. Could have had the million, though. Just saying. So, I airlifted to the other hospital, and they had to cut my neck open, and they connected so you have two main arteries, one on each side of your neck. I no longer have this one. I only have one here. If you go here, there is no pulse. They had to take this artery, hook it up to something called an ECMO machine, and filter out all of my blood, clean it, and then put it back in my body. Somehow that takes out all the stuff through your lungs, the little weird things at the end of your lungs, I guess. Takes it out, into your blood and out, blah, blah, blah. This was going really, really bad. This was not working. the doctors were like preparing my mother for like, your baby's not gonna make it. And if he does, it's like a very slim chance, if he does, he's gonna have some serious brain damage. And I'm here, so we're still kind of, the brain damage is up in the air. I've heard a lot of hums and haws about that, but it wasn't going as planned. And my mother was furious at God. She did everything she could to have a healthy birth. And she's like, don't you dare take my baby. You cannot take, he is mine. You aren't taking him. And God said, whose child? So my mom wasn't raised in a Christian house. Sorry, I should have said this, but she did find God a couple years prior to that. Not really sure how, but she was a Christian at this point. And so God challenged her and was like, whose kid are you talking about? Pretty sure that's my kid. And reminded her the story of Abraham and Isaac. And in that moment, my mom was like taken back, and she made a really hard decision, as any parent in here would imagine. And she said, all right, if you want to take him right now, then you take him. He's yours. I got nothing. And a couple moments later, a doctor came in and said, we don't really know what's happening, but it kind of looks like he's pulling through. And my mom was just as shocked as you could imagine. You know, the doctor's telling you your son's going to die, to don't really know what's happening, but he's on the up now. So, which is incredible. So God has always been in my life. I've recently found out some interesting stuff about that scenario I'm not going to get into right now, but I feel really grateful, and it's given me a lot of sense of like purpose that I should be living for him. But that also comes with a lot of shame, that why did I do all those things that I did, knowing full well what he has already done for me. And so fast forward to like, you know, your average like middle school experience. I didn't fit in. I was always trying to be liked. I would walk in a room and look around and see who's looking at me, because I was always wondering if there's eyes on me, and then that made me look like a freaking weirdo because I'm always looking at people. And then I was really, really like bullied as a kid, but I was also doing a lot of the bullying because I wanted to be fit. I wanted to fit in. So there was always that back and forth. My dad and my mom separated when I was about a year old. My dad became very abusive. He was a drinker as well. He became abusive towards my mother and my sister. And it was a lot of psychological abuse. And I won't get too much into that. But anyways, so they weren't together at this point, so I would see my dad every other weekend. My mom had custody. And during that time, my dad was like my hero. I loved hanging out with my dad, but there were some things that weren't great there. This was actually my earliest time where I think I got introduced to what naked people look like, and where I could remember it, where we would watch movies and like a sex scene would come on. There was no turning it off. There was no go in the other room. There was just like a put your hand over your eyes kind of thing. So I'm like hearing everything, and I'm probably seeing it too through his. It's just, yeah. So I think that's what I can recall the earliest time for me. And this is being like maybe like 5 years old or something. Going through school, I also really, really, really did not trust women whatsoever. Me and my mom didn't really get along that well, and all my teachers growing up were female. I always acted out in school, and so all I did every day was get corrected by females, and this taught me to not trust them. I don't like them. They don't have my best intentions at heart, blah, blah, blah. And in that same time, probably then going into high school, grade 9, which was 14 years old, that's when I started to kind of get into drugs a little bit, and drinking. Drinking was much more of a, it didn't happen as much when I was a teenager, but it definitely happened. It was more so drugs. I'm not gonna get totally into that. That was a long time ago for me, and I've kind of I've closed that door in my life. I've closed that door to that part of my life, so I just got into a bunch of stuff, and I don't talk about it too much anymore. But it was there. And so I went into high school, same thing, kind of just got worse off. And eventually I felt, okay, I'm going to move to my dad's because I think that I'm going to have a better time there because my dad doesn't care. My dad is just going to let me do whatever I want to do. My mom's constantly got her hand on me and getting me in trouble and blah, blah, blah. So I moved to my dad's thinking the grass is greener on the other side. And as it turns out, it wasn't. I loved it at first. One of the biggest things I got to do when I moved to my dad's, because it was a totally different town, is I made this conscious decision to change my identity. First of all, I was going to take my last name out. My last name's Arsenault. As a kid, being a kid, kids are mean. I did not like that. That name did not go well for me. So I decided I'm going to take out my last name. And my middle name is James. I just went by Chris James. I introduced myself as Chris James to everyone. People thought I had no middle name. James was my last name. And with that, somehow came this new persona of someone that was confident and someone that you wanted to have around. And I just switched schools, and immediately, people liked me and people wanted to be around me, and we were hanging out. It was a good time, and I found this new identity, but it wasn't real. Because my dad, he was a little more lax with the rules, that I kind of went out and I partied a lot more. He eventually started, I think maybe my mother had some sort of conversation with him, I'm guessing, because at some point he did get a little more strict. And then of course, me being me, I was like, nope, don't like that. And so I ended up moving out of his house and moved in with a friend. And that whole situation was terrible because there was drugs coming in and out of that house constantly. Lots of parties. It was a party house. It was the house that like in high school everyone came to our house to party, so it was always there. It wasn't great. I was in a relationship at this point as well. This is probably around grade 11 or 12. I was in a relationship, and that did not go so well. But this was like my first serious relationship. I got very heavily invested. My heart was very heavily invested, and that didn't work out. And I just was absolutely crushed. And I went through a huge season of depression after this. Didn't really know what to do. And my drug and alcohol abuse was kind of just going up, and I hated myself. And so at this point, I'm at my dad's. I moved back to my dad's, and I didn't really know what to do. My dad I remember it was St. Patrick's Day of 2012, and I had been out on a binge for a day or two, and then I came home, and I remember getting home, and I wanted food, but my dad doesn't have a lot of money. He's had the same job since I was born, basically, but it's not this crazy high-paying job, so he's always been very limited with his money, and so I came home and I wanted some food, and he was like, "No, that's not for you. That's for I have a little brother and sister that live with him as well." And he's like, "That's for them. That's not for you." And I was kind of floored at that. And of course, this huge screaming match happened, and I'm hungover. I'm probably high at this point as well. I can't remember, but I walk out. I go next door to my friend's house, and we're chatting, and eventually I call my mom, and I asked if I can move back in with her, and she says, "Yes, of course, more than happy to have you back, but we got to start talking about Teen Challenge because you got a problem." So I said, "Okay." March 29th, 2012, she takes me to a Teen Challenge outreach, and I got to hear a couple stories about people that looked just like me, but they were openly talking about everything. When I was like, holy crap, how are you saying this in front of people? How are you talking about a porn addiction in front of people? How are you talking about this and that? It was mind-blowing, right? So I was touched, and I was like, this is really cool. And I remember in that room praying to God, I was like, okay, I was very familiar with God at this point. He's been in and out of my life. I had what I believed to be a relationship with Jesus at that time, but it was a little different than what it should be, I suppose. And so I prayed and I was like, God, all right, if you want me to go to Teen Challenge, if this is like your direction right now, I'll go. But you have to tell me. You personally, God yourself, have to tell me. And I won't accept it from anything else. There's no way. So at the end, a man named George Glover, he at the time he was like the CEO of Teen Challenge Canada. He started it in Canada. And he's a very close friend of mine. He invited everyone out for prayer. So I was like, I'm going to go up and I'm going to ask him to pray for my ex-girlfriend because she's having a hard time. And so I did that. And he's like, yeah, okay, like I will, for sure, 100%. But what about you? What about you? You are here right now. What about you? And I was like, yeah, I kind of struggle with addiction. I didn't really give him too much info. And he looked me dead in the eyes and was like, Chris, I want you to come to Teen Challenge. And in that moment, I knew it was not his words that I heard. Something just clicked and I was like, holy crap, God literally just spoke to me. And it was so direct. And he even said, so Teen Challenge is actually really cheap. It's only about $1,000 for the entire year. It's incredibly cheap. That's Canadian too, so that's like 2 Monopoly dollars. And so he offered to pay $500 for me to get in as well. So he paid half the fee, which was amazing. So I went into Teen Challenge June 19th, 2012. That was a Tuesday. 2 days later, on the Thursday, I saw my first miracle that I, to this day, cannot explain. In Teen Challenge, it was Thursdays we had student life. On that day, it was raining all day. And the plan was after the day, we're all going to the beach. And the whole day, we're like, why are we going to the beach? It's freaking raining. You're nuts. I just got here. I'm like, this place is crazy. Why, God, am I here? Why am I here in this place where people are telling me to go to the beach when it's like, and I mean like pouring rain all day, no stop. And so it gets to that point, and he's like, all right, everyone on the bus, and we all hopped on it's like a school bus, but it's big and purple. So it was really like, if you imagine like a bunch of, addicts on a big purple bus everywhere, like it was so funny. Yeah. So we drive to the beach, it's pouring all the way there. And we're like, what are we doing on this beach? And the man, his name was Dan White. He was an awesome dude, very charismatic. He said, we're going to go to the beach, but first we're going to pray and this rain's going to stop. And now, again, let me tell you, it had been raining all day with no stops. And so we're like, okay, great. Now we're in a purple bus with a loony. Like, what is happening right now? And so he shared with us a couple of stories in the Bible where people prayed and changed the weather. And so he prayed that the rain would stop for the duration of our time on the beach and that it would continue when we left. And so by the time he said amen, you could literally hear the water lessening, and then we all looked outside, and it was like someone pressed fast forward on the clouds, and you watched them faster than I've ever seen just open. And we were like, holy crap. We were like, this is what? This just happened? Could not believe our eyes. So we're like, okay, I guess we're going to the beach. So we get off the bus, we're doing our thing. We were on the beach for like, I'm not sure how long, probably like an hour and a half maybe. And we get on the bus. And just as the last person gets on the bus, you started to hear rainfall again. At the same moment, they like closed the door, rain started falling. And again, it was just like a so incredibly surreal moment. Had no idea what we just witnessed. And that was my second day in Teen Challenge. So I was like, okay, I think I'm going to stick this out. I kind of want to see what's happening here. I saw a lot of cool stuff there. I'm not going to get into that. One of the very short things is, I saw someone that was born with, what's that? You have a really hard time reading letters are backwards. Dyslexia. Yeah, so he's born with a really bad case of dyslexia. It would take freaking so long to get to read a page, and just like that, completely gone. I remember him coming up to the door one night and was like, I can read. It was really cool. He was shocked. Anyways, it was really cool. It was a really good place, but Teen Challenge is an amazing place that really loves grace because of what it is. But they teach very much so the importance of the law. But I think for me, all I heard was grace, and so I fell in love with His grace and not His law. I loved learning about it, but not obeying it. Shortly after, I was still working there, and porn came right back, full sending it. But also this time, because I'm older now, women started entering the picture where they became a game to me because I didn't like them controlling me, but I could control them. And I figured out that I could sleep with a bunch of women if I just figured out what piece they were missing. And if I could just mimic that piece, it was super easy. And so I was working at Teen Challenge and then doing this on the side. And then I also applied for YWAM, got accepted. I was going to go to YWAM in Florida. And then eventually Teen Challenge offered me this promotion, and it included going to Saskatchewan and helping with that center, And so I didn't go to YWAM, went to there. And when I went away to Saskatchewan, it was literally the middle of nowhere. It was the worst. And they say Saskatchewan is so flat that if your dog runs away, you don't have to actually chase it, because 3 days later, you still see it running. It's just that flat. And they're not kidding. It's depressingly flat. So I went there, and I was immediately I drove there. It took about 3 days. The drive there was incredible. I love driving. I'm a big car guy, and that 3 days alone, me and my thoughts. I drove through the state, so I didn't have cell service. It was literally just 3 days of me and God, and it was freaking awesome. And then I got there, and I was like, what did I do? I got there around midnight, and I remember I was freaking out. And then I was sitting outside at my porch, and I was kind of having these chats with God, and I was like, I really hope that I made the right decision. And then I remember seeing the northern lights for the first time that night, and it was really, really bright. I'm not saying it was anything, but it gave me a lot of peace in that moment. And so it was really cool to see, and I appreciated that. A couple months later, I actually invited a really good buddy that I did the program with to work there as well. And so he came, and we really heavily enabled each other. We lived about an hour out of Saskatoon, which also meant an hour from the nearest Tim Hortons, which as a Canadian is basically a sin. So we were in Saskatoon almost every day anyways, driving there just to go to Tim Hortons. And so we started drinking. We started going to bars on our days off or whatever, or sometimes just after work, and then driving back. So drinking and driving just became very chill. It was very chill in Saskatchewan. There's literally no other cars on the road, so it's not like it's dangerous, quote unquote. Oh, I'm just gonna say that. And so we just started just being idiots and drinking all the time, and then eventually, they started catching on to us, and they started asking questions, and we got nervous. And then at this point, I have an older sister, which I already told you about, actually. My older sister, growing up, me and her didn't get along, but in our older years, we became best friends. We are to this day. And she was like, hey, what do you think about coming to work in the food and beverage industry? You can make really good money. It's not hard, and there's a career path you could actually potentially chase. I was like, that sounds great. I love that. And in my head, I'm like, because these guys are 100% going to fire me soon, because they're going to find out that I'm now drinking, I'm smoking, and it's just it's bound to happen. I can't hide this forever. So me and him both quit and went to work at the Fairmont in Banff, Alberta, where she was a director at the time. Well, she was a director for Fairmont for a while and did other various positions. I was in Banff for about a year and a half. In that year and a half was crazy. Very small town, very, very, very party forward. Every night you could go to the bar and go home with someone new. And it was just a revolving door, and it was crazy. Had a lot of good times. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was all terrible and I was depressed. And no, I had some great times. I'm not going to lie about that. Am I mad that I did that to God and kind of hurt God? Yeah, of course. I wish I didn't. But in the moment, I was happy. And I was also chasing money. You can make a lot of money in the food and beverage industry and do very little work. So at that time, I was a server, and I was studying to become a sommelier, which is a wine expert. I actually did the test and passed there. And eventually I got tired of Banff because it was not city enough for me. I moved to Calgary. Calgary was, nice happy medium. I had the mountains right there, great. And I had a little city to hang out. My problems just kind of followed me. Still, at this point, I'm battling. Still kind of hate myself secretly inside. Not talking about it though. I have a crazy porn addiction that's no longer even just porn. It's just like I can just like find it. I would just text, even for like friends and stuff. It was super easy just to get women just to send me naked photos of them. You just figure out what to say. It was just terrible. And whether I had like a partner or not didn't really matter. I kept that part hidden. And yeah, it was nasty. There was only like one person that I was with in Calgary that was just like this, I saw as like this incredible being that like I was able to like stop everything else. But she basically got deported, so that didn't work out. So anyways, I'm not gonna go into that. After Calgary, I was in Calgary for about like maybe 2 years or something. I can't remember. I decided I was going to go back to Toronto. I was really tired of being away from my family for so long. So I was like, all right, let's go back to Toronto, and that's going to be like my long-term thing. I don't want to keep moving around. In the last 4 years or so, I moved around from Saskatchewan to Banff to Calgary. I was only in Saskatchewan for like maybe 9 months or so. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back to Toronto, stay there. I moved in with my sister, and I got an incredible job in Toronto. It was, at the time, it was the number 3 restaurant in Toronto, 13th best in all of Canada. It was just incredible. I was making fantastic money, more money than I know what to do with. Kind of doing whatever I want, still banking it. And life was kind of good, but I was still partying, drinking every night, and I wasn't really paying attention to my job. And eventually they came out to me and were like, you're not really doing what you're supposed to be doing, so we're going to let you go. And that was after like 6 months, I think. I can't remember how long I worked at that, probably like 6 months. It was like that cutoff, I guess. Anyways, or maybe even 3 months, I don't know. Really cool fun fact about this, though, is on the way to work that day, before that, my buddy had called me and said, hey, I'm moving to Cayman. I'm going to go bartend in Cayman. And he told me a little bit about it, and I was like, that's crazy. That sounds sick. I love my job, though, so I can't go with you. And then I went to work and then basically got fired and given 2 weeks notice. And so I called him back after and was like, I'm coming with you, bro. Like, let's do this. I've made enough money that I can like just up and move there. And so on November 1st, 2018, I moved to the Cayman Islands. This was an interesting life choice. I didn't see it at the time, but this would literally be like the worst choice I've ever made in my life. Cayman is a very lawless country. You do whatever you want. And no one really, as long as, you just stay out of the eye of like the government, you're okay. Even the government itself, they do whatever they want. There's so much money in that country that people just don't care. Again, back in a tourist place, revolving door with women, and drinking nonstop. After post-teen challenge, I never got back into drugs, thankfully. I started when I was in Cayman. I did start smoking weed the last year that I was there, but it was a little bit more chill. But yeah, I just kind of lost myself when I was there. I met someone in April of 2019, so I was there for about 9 months, 6 months, 5 months, and I pursued this chick. I saw her on Instagram. I remember, and I was like, damn, she's hot, and I followed her, and I didn't want to message her because I didn't want to be a weirdo. And so I was like, I'll just like some posts as they came up, not going down a timeline or anything. And one day she she posted one of those Instagram stories, I have a question, let me know, blah, blah, blah. And that's how I started engaging with her and talking with her. We hit it off, and we had a great relationship at the beginning. I was able to, I didn't talk to any, I completely cut out women for this relationship. And for the first majority of the relationship, I cut out porn as well. I was able to do that, and it was great. We had a great relationship. We even got through COVID and didn't kill each other, which was fantastic. But that didn't last forever. A couple things happened. Because of COVID, I had to switch jobs because I was working at a tourist place. Island was closed, so I had to move to a bar that was local. And she worked at a bar that was local. She was managing it, so she told me to come work there. And it was great. I battled it for a while. I didn't want to because I had already dated my boss once, and I didn't want to make that decision again. But I did it, and this was amazing. I worked at a bar that I, again, made a ridiculous amount of money. Everyone that came to the bar were regulars. They all became my friends. And so eventually I was just getting paid every day to drink with my friends. And I was getting drunk every day. We were buying a house at one point. We had everything lined up. We were 2 days away from closing. Basically, we had, her father was going to buy the house for us, and we were going to finance it through him so that the interest rates or whatever weren't crazy. And he pulled out 2 days before closing. And we had already given our notice to the place where we were living. So we had 2 days to find a new place to live and move out. And it got really hectic. We moved into this terrible apartment that we hated. I had to put a lot of strain on our relationship. At this point, we were also engaged, FYI, and I'm fully just back into porn. I don't care. I don't really remember when or why I started watching it again. It just kind of happened, I guess. But she thought I was sleeping with other people because I didn't really have any interest in her, which completely makes sense. And I was just watching porn every day and multiple times a day. Didn't matter. It was terrible. That relationship went totally down the drain. We broke up 2 years ago. And my life that went to probably the darkest part of that I've been through. I freaking hated myself at that point. I went through some crazy depression. I'm getting drunk every night still, but then now I'm if I'm not with someone, I'm crying myself to sleep, or I'm drinking until I just pass out on the couch and I spill the alcohol on myself or something. every single night. I remember this really crazy thing is, one night this is happening, and this is why I always struggle with, sometimes people say, if you know God and you go off and you do this, then you never knew God, and blah, blah, blah. This is why I struggle with this, because anyways, I was like, it was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'm sitting on my couch, and I've already finished a bottle, I'm on a second bottle, and I'm freaking out, I'm crying, I'm screaming at God, like, can you get me out of this? Like, save me. I am in such depression. I keep thinking about just like jumping off my balcony. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, I just really need someone to talk to. I really, really, really need someone to talk to, please. And like 2 minutes later, someone texted me that I did the program with in Teen Challenge 10 years prior, and I hadn't talked to since. And was like, hey man, like, how you doing? And I was like, it's freaking 4 a.m. I haven't talked to this guy in 10 years. Why is he texting me? This is insane. He stayed up with me for a couple hours, and we were talking, and he started checking up on me frequently, and we built a little bit of a relationship. His name was Kyle. This guy I owe my life to, man. He saved my life. I had some really bad thoughts, and he did it for me. And I'm really happy about that. I went to a buddy's wedding in June of 2 years ago, and that's where I talked to. This is where God started calling me back, and I went to a buddy's wedding. His father is a missionary and does a lot of cool missionary work, but he's also very, very, in touch with Jesus. And after the wedding, he called me aside. He was like, I want to talk to you. He's like, I got to let you know that God is saying to me, for you, that you're choosing to wander in the desert, that you're choosing to stay here, and I have all of this for you, and it's ready. And he's like, and then he spoke exactly about, because I was always afraid. I was like, I got to go back to rehab. And I don't want to do that. I'm not doing Teen Challenge again. That sucked. And he's like, I'm not going to make you do that. You're going to start exactly where you left off. You're not going back. So that kind of calmed me a little bit. So I was like, okay, all right, let's figure out what I'm going to do. Got home, applied to YWAM in Huntington Beach. I was denied there because I'm, too old. Their campus there, they said, is primarily ages like 19 to like 22 or whatever, and they said that I would get more fulfillment if I went to a different campus with a similar age group, and I was like, okay, I can respect that, that's cool. So after they said no, I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep on doing my own thing. So again, everything, that's all happening again, same stuff. And beginning of December, I got fired, and it came out of nowhere. And I remember, because I was a functioning alcoholic. I just showed up for work every day, did everything I needed to do, never called in sick. And the next day, he's like, yeah, you can come in for a meeting. And I was like, why? What are you doing? Like, out of all of our employees, I'm literally one of the best. And he's like, I just don't like you. He's like, honestly, I don't like you, and I don't want you here anymore. Yeah, fully. Yeah, and I was like, all right. I kind of hurts more. Kind of wish you just said I was a terrible employee. I don't know. That really sucked. I can see now what that really was. And I feel like God kind of hardened his heart towards me to get me out, because I would still be there, making too much money to leave. It was so hard to leave. And so that happens. I was like, all right, let's go home for Christmas and see what life in Canada like is in the winter. And it was the worst. So I went back there for like a week, and I was like, no, I'm going back to Cayman. Screw this. Sorry, God, you're going to have to find another way. And I went back to Cayman. I found another job, and within like 3 weeks, I was fired again. But this time, it was fully my fault. I just stayed up binging all night. I worked at like 11 a.m. and I stopped drinking at like 6 a.m. and passed out. I did not wake up for that alarm. And then I was like, all right, this is crazy. This is nuts. And that's when God, he made a way. Eventually, a couple weeks later, I moved back here. I moved back to Canada. And I started applying for jobs at Teen Challenge. I had an interview process that lasted about 2 months there, and then they just kind of sent me an email saying, sorry, we're going a different direction with our application process. Best wishes. And I was really pissed because I was like, I have been in an application process with you for 2 months, and now you're just sending me an email saying good luck. That from a company that I gave my life to at one point, and I was like, I just felt like garbage. Like, yeah, good luck. I was really not happy, so I was screaming at God. I got that email on a Monday, and then a couple of days later, I was just screaming at God. I remember driving home, just yelling at him. I'm like, what do you want me to do? I don't know what to do. You brought me home. I know clearly I walked this path exactly how you wanted me to get home. I've done every little thing. I haven't really gone over everything, but every little thing that you wanted me to do. And I was freaking out. What do you want me to do? And that was around 1 p.m. that I was praying that. And I think it was about 8 p.m. Dan texted me and said, hey man, I think you should come check out this school that I'm at. Now I graduated the program with Dan Venus in Teen Challenge program in 2013. We had kept in contact a little bit, but I hadn't even talked to him I don't even think once since I even been in Cayman. So I hadn't spoken to him for like 6 years plus. And for him to message me randomly and be like, hey, I think you should come to this school. I was like, oh, this is freaking nuts. Okay, let's think about this. I called Steve. Steve briefly told me a little bit about it, and he was like, you should come on a P61. And I was like, what the heck is that? So anyways, as some of you know, I came here for a month in June, did the P61 program. In that time, I felt weird because I felt like when I was in my life and I was talking to God, it was really easy to talk to God. And I would hear from God. But when I came here, it was almost like radio silence. It was like I had this little flame that was over here, and it felt really hot because I was in a cold area, and then I came to a place that was really hot, and all of a sudden my little flame isn't very hot. And so I was really confused. I didn't really know what was going on. And I remember one day in this P61, God is like, I'm still working through the part of getting through worship for some reason. I don't feel connected to worship. You might even notice when I'm just kind of standing there. I'm not really sure what it is. I'm still working through it. But I remember in my P61, God is like, let's take baby steps. Just come to the forward and sit down. Come sit at my feet. I was like, okay. So I went down and I sat down. And a couple minutes later, Johnny came up to me, put his hand on my back, waited a couple seconds, and then he said, I can see that you're sitting with God right now. And I was like, ah, that's crazy. And then he proceeded to pray Psalm 40, 1-3 over me, which in Teen Challenge, the reason why it's in one of my favorite verses is in Teen Challenge, that was prayed over me as my life verse. And I was like, that's crazy, he didn't know that. I mean, there's a lot of verses out there he could have been praying. Anyways, so I was like, okay, I kind of like this place. God, you want me to come here? And 3 days before I left, I just said, point blank, God, yes or no? And he's like, yes. So I was like, okay. So I went back home. I had the summer to wait before coming here, and that was the worst because I was sitting in my mother's house. I had no money. I spent the last bit of money that I had to come here, and for the P61, and I literally just sat on my kitchen table for 2 months. Me and my mom do not get along still, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get there. I don't know how I can't go buy a coffee, let alone buy a freaking flight to California. Let alone pay for a school. That's not going to happen. I don't understand this. And God was just like, man, like, I got this. It's okay. Chill out. And one by one, every little thing that I needed, just boxes kept on getting ticks. I need a taxi to the airport with all my stuff. Someone, hey, can I pay for this for you? George Glover, the man that paid for half, that started Teen Challenge Canada. He doesn't work for them anymore, but he offered and he paid for my visa. And he was my, like, you know, guarantor for this place or whatever. And one by one, everything was covered. And right up until, like, paying for my luggage the night of, my mom, like, sat down, because we didn't talk. Me and my mom didn't really talk at all the 2 months that I was home. Where, like I said, not a good place. And she sat down, and she didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't tell her what I was doing. She had no idea. She's like, you're leaving tomorrow. Can I know what you're doing? I was like, yeah, all right, let's talk. I shared with her, and then she's like, do you need anything? I was like, everything's been covered. The only thing I don't have right now is paying for my luggage. And she paid for that. I even had a friend, and so Dan paid for my flight here, but I had another friend that actually paid for my flight from Toronto to Florida first, so that it was cheaper from Florida to California than from Toronto to California. Everything just kind of worked out, and being here is obviously, I know that I'm in the right place, and I'm really excited about everything that's happening. But God's been very prevalent in my life the entire time, and so I think one of the biggest things that I get out of my life when I look at my story is that, you know, when you're sitting there and you're self-hate and you're like, I'm this kind of person, I do these kind of things. Like, God is, the whole time God's looking at me like, man, it's okay. Just look at me. Let's just have a conversation. Let's just talk. And yeah, it's been really cool. So yeah, and then I'm here and I'm happy about it. And yeah, so I guess that's my story.